So the first thing that comes to mind is that finally we are now seeing everything we've been pitching for so long, right? We started in 2014 when I was very fortunate to work along Nitin, and we came into Paramount. And I was actually with a team today, and I was saying to them, with Crosby in our portfolio, we've really crossed 2,000 units that we've sold in downtown Miami. And that's a testament to everybody in this room. So thank you, all of you. And I think you deserve a huge round of applause for that. Because without our broker community, we couldn't do that. But I think it's finally here. Everything that we used to say, when we used to use a lot of animation and say, one day you're going to be able to walk everywhere and have the ability to walk to restaurants and go to a Heat game and go to the theater and never have to leave. And I'm very excited to see that coming into fruition, and super excited to be here with amazing partners for a new project.
So Nitin, my colleagues tell me that you've been in this for the long haul. You've seen the tough times, and you worked as part of the group of folks who really helped to bring the city back. So what's your vision for the new Miami?
So I think a lot of it you're seeing. I mean, if I said to you, close your eyes, and our master planner for this was Howard Elkis, who's an incredible architect. Unfortunately, he passed. But he once said, just close your eyes, and what if you could imagine a global city? And surrounding that global city is an art museum, a science museum, 100 acres of parks, a performing arts center, a train station. And by the way, it's the highest elevation in town, in the city of Miami, with 200,000 square feet of public space accessible to pedestrians 24/7. Where would you picture that, right? And the answer is nowhere. Well, we have pictured that in Miami, and it's with such pleasure that I see so many supporters of ours, as Peggy mentioned, that have been following Miami World and listening to the story we were trying to tell. And there's nothing better than actually doing. And so as we've completed $2 billion at Miami Worldcenter, with $1 billion, you can see cranes all around us underway for the next phase, with still more to come. It's incredibly exciting and rewarding. The promenade you're sitting on was paid for as part of Miami Worldcenter. This is a forever promenade that will connect Brightline through 7th Street all the way to the arena. These are incredible things that happen in great cities, and we're fortunate that it's happening here at Miami. So for us, it's the natural evolution of what's happened for our city. We are the confluence here at Miami Worldcenter of arts, culture, entertainment, transportation, and education, because let's not forget Miami-Dade College. That's all the stuff that surrounds us. But then also what's transpired during that time is these great neighborhoods like Edgewater, Midtown, Design District, Wynwood, all to the north, obviously Brickell to the south, and then of course the beach and what's happening out west. We are truly the center of Miami. So as Nick started off saying we're the new heart of Miami, that makes me smile, because that's the message. That's what we've been working at for so long.
So the play part of the pandemic has been pretty rough. People are still working, people still living. Chef Beltran, the restaurant industry has been hit particularly hard. How do you see it? How are you seeing resiliency here in Miami? How is that sector doing, and what do you expect as the spring is on the horizon?
So I think it's interesting, just because what you were mentioning before, like the new Miami. I think a very resilient and hardworking community of food and beverage is what has stood very strong and what's kept a lot of the city together. And I think the new Miami it's a nice term, but I think in reality this has been a foundation that the seed was planted decades ago. And lucky enough, we have people that had the foresight to, build a new heart of Miami with new opportunities to bring new things to the city. Resiliency for sure, hard work for sure, and I think the talent of the community here, and just like, I don't know, what I've seen over the last 2 years has been inspiring from every angle, from mom and pop restaurants to big corporations supporting other people within the city, to smaller, restaurateurs just doing whatever they could to survive. And then on the other side of that, really not only gaining a name for themselves, but helping the city in general become a food and beverage destination?
Patrick, so mobility, easing mobility. One thing I noticed in Miami that's the same as it was 12 years ago, there's a car culture here. So how do you see it? How is Brightline going to contribute to having folks jump on a train, whether it's to go out to dinner, whether it's to go to work, whether it's to go to a Heat game? What are some of the plans that you have at Brightline to get some of those folks out of the cars and into the trains?
So thanks a lot for having me here. I just want to comment on some of the other speakers. What's materializing here at Miami Worldcenter is actually going to allow Miami to reframe what Miami means to the rest of the world and the rest of the country. A lot of people perceive Miami, think about Miami as South Beach, and this materialization of what's happening around us right here is actually giving us something to show people that's different from Miami Beach. That's a different atmosphere, a different environment. And in the context of mobility, we continue to see population growth throughout the state. So Brightline obviously is regional. It's running from Miami all the way up to Orlando. It's stopping in all of the downtowns along the way. And our view is we want to give people the option to own a car or not own a car. And that's becoming more and more important because as we experience all this population growth, about 500,000 additional people into South Florida in the last 12 months, and that's going to continue, the congestion's getting worse. And there is no more asphalt to build. On 95, on the main north-south corridors, there is no more expansion possible on I-95. And the average speeds are now down to below 33 miles an hour on 95. It's also the most congested, it's the most dangerous highway on the road. And people want alternatives. You know, the millennial generation and those who are coming after them, they don't really want to own a car. They don't really want to own anything, actually, if they can avoid it. So having alternatives and being able to provide, you know, there's two parts of mobility. There's the actual physical infrastructure, like trains and rideshare and scooters and bikes. But the digitization of that is really the game changer. And, you know, in addition to the $5 billion investment we're making in infrastructure from Miami to West Palm Beach, we're also making a significant investment into technology so that we can integrate, not just, you know, offering our own train tickets, but integrate our mobility solution with other mobility solutions. So you can actually book a trip from your couch to the game, or from your couch to dinner, or from your house to your parents' house, all in one transaction, all with one ticket, all with one payment. So that you really do have a car alternative. You know, so instead of reaching in your pocket for your car keys, you're reaching for your phone, and somebody's picking you up and taking you where you need to go. And that's the vision that we have for mobility, and I think that that's more relevant than ever today. And in the context of the folks who are going to move into a development like this, why would you want to own a car? So we want to make sure that people don't need that personal transportation, and they have alternatives.
So, JP, there's a lot of positives going on here. People are migrating into Miami and South Florida, and that is driving up the cost of housing sharply year over year. Affordability, conversely, is going down. I know that your company Related has in its legacy affordability, affordable housing, workforce housing. Tell us a little bit about your strategy in those two areas. What needs to be done in the city to make sure that there's a diverse group of people who can afford to live here?
Well, I think affordability is not just an issue for Dade County, right? I mean, it's an issue in all of the major cities in the United States and around the world. But one thing our company is doing is, you know, we are doing a lot of mixed income housing, right? So we do some very affordable housing. Then you have mixed income that allows the teachers and cops to have options to live in the urban core, right? I mean, I think what you don't want is it to become unaffordable, where then people have to move out of the urban core and then have to have a car to commute back into where they work, right? Which is why I think World Center is such an amazing location, because this is a place where you really don't need a car. right? So you can save the expense that you would have to spend on the car, the insurance, gas, and be able to walk, take the Brightline, take an Uber, a Lyft, a scooter to where you work. So, we're trying to do our part, but I think it's, the affordability issue's going to continue to be an issue. But I also think what's happening in Miami is like he said, is you had 500,000 people move to Florida. And a lot of those people moving to Florida are coming with high-paying jobs, right? So there's corporations that are making Miami home or a second home and bringing thousands of employees. And those employees are coming from New York, Chicago, California, who all have fairly high salaries. And I think that is why you're seeing the rental increases that you're seeing and the pricing of condos increasing, because Miami still, if you compare it to other major cities, which Miami now is a major city, is still a bargain compared to those other cities like LA and New York.
Peggy, the tech industry has gotten a lot of coverage over the past year. The boom here is rivaling really anywhere. Some folks even coming in from Silicon Valley and California. Tell me a little bit about how you see tech integrating with the city of Miami, the downtown, the pros and the cons of the tech sector.
Well, I think everybody, we're all welcoming this new migration. I think that the California is not something that we had seen in the past in the movement that we've seen in the recent year alone. Just obviously the arena being FTX alone just gives you a perspective of where the city is moving. And I think everybody you speak to, every time I go to California, which I go often because my daughter lives out there, I meet someone getting a coffee and I say, I'm from Miami. And they're like, oh my God, my friend just moved from Miami. And we work, they just moved for a hedge fund there. And then they're constantly moving. So we're seeing the migration. I think it's going to continue. The other thing that's happening, I think, is also, if we're looking in South Florida and talking about affordability, right? We're talking about units that we have in the market right now that range anywhere from 400 square feet to 2 bedrooms that are 800 square feet. They're extremely efficient because we are becoming denser in downtown and things are being more crowded. People are very open to saying, I can live in a 2-bedroom and also I can afford a 2-bedroom. So you're seeing a lot of the younger demographic saying, I'll grab my roommate and maybe we should buy something because all of a sudden buying is cheaper than renting in many ways. So I think we're seeing a lot more, and I think the continuation of, for example, not having parking, right? People are used to now using an Uber, walking to the Brightline, taking the train. Soon enough, people will arrive from the airport and be able to connect to come to downtown. So I think it's helping in the way where we're getting the diversity, right? So not only is Miami now, we've always had the Latin American demographic here, but also seeing the migration from California and the Northeast is really changing a lot of that. And of course, tech is a big player to that, from here all the way to the Design District, Wynwood, and all those areas, and of course, Brickell.
Nitin, so when you think about the mixed use, there's been a lot of discussion around the retail down here. The pandemic has dealt a tough blow to retail as well. So when are we going to see this bump in more retailers? When are we going to see more of that downtown?
Well, I was just talking to Chef about that because he's going to be opening very soon, both his restaurant and a cigar bar, which we discussed over a lunch one day. So we started off with a brasserie and we ended up with a dessert having a cigar bar. So that worked out really well. But okay, in the last 6 months, we've announced over 100,000 square feet of retail and restaurants. I don't know of another project in the country that's done that. So you think about that. So all this stuff you're seeing here as you walk around Miami World, the tenants are starting to take possession and building out. So we're going to start seeing, we'll open this year with our first restaurant, our cigar bar, and you'll just continue to see more and more stuff get not only announced, but actually opening. So the 300,000 square feet of retail will start opening this year in 2022. And as I mentioned, we announced over 100,000 square feet. Like, putting that into context, like, that's an extraordinary amount of retail while still dealing with some of the ramifications of COVID.
Chef Beltran, is there a particular style of restaurant or cafe that you think should be added to the menu here in downtown that's not here?
Ooh, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of evolution here. I don't really know, because growth of restaurants is very organic, right? So I think that the city will kind of dictate what needs to happen here eventually over time. I think since we're just going to start seeing things roll out over the next year, 2 years, after that time period, you're going to see what people really pine for. But there's already a lot of good things here, and all we're doing is adding more things to, I guess, if you will, the menu of that. Everything from high-end to everyday is really kind of the goal, to have people feel comfortable where they live, where they work, and, you know, where they kind of spend their everyday lives. So, you know, the community really dictates what should eventually be in a certain area, you know, just because, like, we're at Coconut Grove. Chugs was kind of like a need after a while, and it had a great kind of like reception as soon as we opened. So, you know, there's a lot of higher end things. There's got to be things for every day, and there's got to be that coffee shop that people frequent 2 times a day.
Patrick, so tell the crowd here what you see 5 years from now. What does the next stage of Brightline look like? I know that there's massive expansion underway, both in South Florida and then going north, going all the way to Tampa. So can you take it step by step and tell us what the game plan is and where you're going to be here in 5 years?
Yeah, happy to do that. So, as most of you know, we're now operating between Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach. We've got hourly service every day. We reopened after 19 months of a shutdown for the pandemic. We reopened on November 8th. So we've been reopened for a couple of months. We broke ground yesterday, or maybe the day before, on our new station in Boca Raton. We have a station under construction in Aventura. And for the record, I drove from that site back down here last week, and it took me about an hour and 20 minutes. It'll take about 22 minutes on the train. So I'm pretty excited about that. So Aventura and Boca will open next fall. This time next year, we'll be getting ready to open our station in Orlando. So that construction is 70% complete. It'll be finished from a construction perspective by the end of this year, and then we'll be commencing operation shortly thereafter. In addition to that, we are evaluating site opportunities in the Treasure Coast, and we're looking at potentially locating a site close to Cocoa in Brevard County, which would be a jump-off point for Port Canaveral, which is third busiest cruise port in the world, and also would give people access to the Space Coast, which is getting increasingly interesting. And there's a good beach tourism industry already functional there. And then beyond that, we have I expect by the end of this year to have a route. So we've been evaluating different options in terms of getting from the Orlando airport, where our terminal is located in Orlando, all the way out to Tampa with a stop in Walt Disney World. We've executed a lease with Walt Disney World to locate a station on their property. And then we would continue into downtown Tampa. Tampa is a very interesting market, growing very, very, very quickly. A lot of development happening there, a lot of interest, and a lot of connectivity needed between Tampa and Orlando, and Tampa and the rest of the state. So within 5 years, we will be connecting, I don't know what the population of Florida is going to be by then. Right now, it's about 20 million people. It's probably going to be closer to 25 million people. So we will be connecting about half of those people from downtown to downtown. Plus, there's 130 million people who visit the state on an annual basis. That's a lot of traffic. We estimated, we did a ridership study a couple of years ago. There are about 400 million trips between South Florida and Central Florida annually. That's about 1 million trips a day. We expect to capture a very small percentage of that. We think we'll see about 8 to 10 million people traveling on Brightline in that 5-year time frame.
JP, so the pandemic's in its third year. Miami seems to have been able to handle it a lot better than some areas. What is it, do you think, about this area that has not deterred development nearly as much as it has in many other cities?
Well, one of the key factors was we remained open. And going into COVID is when it was March 2020, we stayed open, and then it was going into winter. So I think everybody didn't want to have to be stuck inside, especially in the colder cities. So that was a very, it was a good decision, I think, by, our governor at the time. In addition to that, I think that, the tax climate here is very friendly, right? You could be living in New York and then just move to Miami and all of a sudden afford your apartment or your condo without any increased, call it, in salary or earnings. So I think that's very attractive. The other states like, California and New York don't seem to be changing in that respect. So I think that's going to continue. And I think what happened when people got here, they realized that number one, they loved it, and number two is that they could be just as efficient working out of Miami and didn't have to be in the West Coast or in New York, right? So first you saw the top CEOs and the executives of these companies coming down, buying houses, not really opening up offices, but they made a decision that, you know what, we want to be down here, and our peers are going to be down here too. So then you saw them start leasing office space and bringing more and more employees. And I think it was a snowball effect. And a perfect example is when you talk about tech, we had an office building in Wynwood that was, 10% leased going into COVID, and we couldn't pay somebody to come lease space. And all of a sudden, we leased space to I think it was the Founders Fund, Keith Rabraw. It was announced, and then all of his buddies took the rest of the space. So I think it just shows you that, people follow people. And that's what happened here, and I think it's here to stay, and I think it's sort of still the beginning, because if you're in the office business now, there's sort of an unlimited supply of potential tenants that are looking for more additional space, and these are the JP Morgans of the world that are looking for 300,000 square feet, and they're looking at downtown to be one of those locations because they realize that their employees are going to want to live close to where they work.
Those companies, some of them anyway, most of them, are still have a workforce arrangement that's either hybrid or fully remote. Does it concern you at all that if that continues indefinitely, that some of them may pull up and leave?
No, well, first of all, they're signing 10 to 15-year leases, right? So that they're making a big commitment. I actually think the workforce will come back to probably 90%. I think the work from home is temporary. I think you saw some of even the tech companies say that they were going to go fully remote, and you can choose what you want to do, and that was reversed, and they said no, actually we're going back into the office. I think being in the office, we like to socialize, and that's where brainstorming and ideas and the biggest part is how do you train new employees to show them the culture and what your company stands for. And it's really hard to do that over Zoom. So I think it may take some time, but I think in the near future we will be very close to being back to sort of where we were with sort of the working back in the office.
Peggy, downtown has many historic buildings. What's the balance of trying to preserve that with the development of the new modern contemporary Miami?
I think it's going to continue adding to the charm. I think the city has been very good about maintaining that. We have monuments that are getting lit up. We have, construction going around that. Unfortunately, there is not much to do as far as the news coming in. But I think preserving what we have and giving it shape and giving it life, I think it adds to that. So it's a nice mix. I wanted to just add something else to what JP was saying when it comes to people moving down, right? We cannot forget, to me, I always refer to Miami as the Hong Kong of the West because it's a perfect spot for all the cultures to come together. I mean, if we look around this room, there's people here from all over the world. When we look at our demographics of who's bought downtown Miami, we have over 63 different countries represented in downtown Miami. That is a huge testament to what the city is. Also, roofs bring retail, right? So all these people moving down to Miami is just going to continue creating an appetite for a much better restaurants, for different lifestyle, all those things. Those are all opportunities for business that are coming into downtown. But furthermore, on top of that, we're getting the migration from the Northeast and from the West. And of course, being taxes the way they are, why wouldn't people move here? If you look at schools and the amount of the wait lists that are happening in all the top schools in South Florida, it's we've never seen before. So I agree with JP in where this is here to stay. It's exciting to continue seeing this development of F&B and continued transportation options.
Nitin, last year the Herald dubbed the urban core of Miami the Wall Street of the South, given the number of firms that have relocated or expanded here. Do you agree with that assessment? And if so, how has that affected the residential market and the commercial market here?
So we've been working, I've chaired economic development at the DDA. There's a lot of great folks from the DDA here, the Downtown Development Authority. And aside from getting into the Wall Street conversation, to something that Chef was talking about earlier, and you mentioned, when COVID hit, we quickly jumped in to help a lot of the small businesses with marketing and supporting our local entrepreneurs and businesses. Simultaneously, we continue this effort to recruit the world's great companies to Miami. As JP mentioned, the CEOs came first, but now the office leases have come. That building right there is not only have a lease with Blackstone, arguably the smartest investor in the world, but they also bought that building, right? Uber's headquarters is in there, Ernst & Young. So what you're seeing are all of these companies coming down here. We just recently announced Tomo Bravo, Microsoft, CI Financial. It's one of the largest money managers in Canada, almost $300 billion of assets. So when over $1 trillion of assets under management comes into downtown in 2 years, yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment. In fact, I think we're better than Wall Street because having worked on Wall Street, it's not that fun. Living in Miami, very fun. And I think that's what's really happened. I think people caught on to the biggest secret that everyone here knows. We live in paradise. And as Patrick said, we used to be, oh, it's just Miami Beach. I know Miami, I've come down, I stay there all the time. They came for 2 days, they go to the beach. They never understood what was really happening. What's really happening is an entire, diverse, interesting culture that has been created on this side of the causeway. And I think when you look at where all the great hotels and restaurants and entertainment and projects, so much of that is now happening on this side of the causeway. Look at Art Basel, what happened? Most of the events were this side of the causeway. But I do think the Wall Street of the South is actually somewhat limiting because what's transpired, thanks in large part to our mayor's efforts, is all this tech, right? We started to talk about that, but when folks like Founders Fund and Tomo Bravo, and now we have multiple unicorns, homegrown or moving to Miami, the tech situation, this 2 years, we've become a top contender for tech companies and now tech talent. And I actually think your question about remote helps us because the only issue we ever had in recruiting companies when people would take the time to understand Miami was a question of talent. And with the natural inclination to have remote talent, that's no longer an issue. But what's happening, now companies feel very comfortable. I'll have people. But every time someone comes to visit somebody, they're like, wow, this is incredible. Why the heck am I living here? Forget about taxes, because we've always had better taxes. Forget about weather, because we've always had better weather. What we now have is the infrastructure, the arts, the culture, the restaurants, the entertainment that actually draws the world's talent that can live anywhere to stay in Miami, not just visit. I think that's the game changer, and I think that's what's going to differentiate Miami World from some of the other areas.
You brought your fans here, I can tell. Chef Beltran, so your industry has been known in the last couple of years for making the big pivot, doing things that you didn't think you would need to do just to survive, just to continue on. Can you go through some examples for a restaurant? What does that pivot mean? What are some of the new things that you've had to do and others have had to do to continue operating?
Well, I think that the time of the pivot is kind of over, thankfully. I think that we learned a lot through that time. And, you know, that was the word for like a whole year. It's like we pivoted to like this, X, Y, and Z. One of my coffee shops turned into like a grocery store, and we were delivering meals to people's homes, and we were doing our own delivery, and we were just putting a lot of food in boxes. But really what happened through that is I think that a lot of people started to gain a lot more love for the local identity of what is Miami. And this is something that Nitin and I have talked about a lot, is that in that time, people started to reverse their focus away from bigger names from elsewhere, which is cool and they're fine, but also start to look at that mom and pop shop that's in the corner and it's been there for 20 years and say that, you know, instead of just going there like once every 6 months, maybe we'll go once every 2 weeks. And maybe we should order from there because they've been there for a long time, or because they're a local, or because, again, we're starting to reinvest into what makes Miami special, which is Miami itself. You know, a lot of those other people that I think came here and have great names, and I think it's important for them to be here, I think during that time they may have shut down. And I think during that time, Miami, they really they dug deep. And pivot is a word, but they really showed their true colors. You know, again, it goes back to what everyone here has said, is like Miami is known for being South Beach. And I can't tell you the last time I went to South Beach. You know, and I was born and raised here. I myself know Miami as only this side of the causeway, all the way down to Homestead. You know, all those amazing farmers that I've been using for 10 to 15 years, those little taco shops that have been there for 10 years, everything, all those things. Little Havana, where I was born and raised, that same place that I was getting a Frito when I was 10 years old is still there, you know? So we refocused. I think the pivot it happened, right? We had to start putting food in boxes. We had to become a grocery store. We had to double down on social media, which is awesome, I guess. But really, we pivoted back to focusing on what makes Miami special, which is the people of Miami and the community of Miami. And that's, I think, as we go through this time, the food and beverage industry is very different than, what these fine gentlemen do, right? But they're creating opportunity for people like us. And I think that's why you're pivoting back to showing what makes Miami special, which is Miami itself.
So is there a particular identity for the restaurant sector that you would tell someone who's new to Miami that this is what we're about? Or is it more about the diversity of Miami? How would you answer that?
Well, I think also Miami food identity has had, I think it's had a struggle for many years. And I think now that struggle is gone. I think a lot of times people would say, well, Miami doesn't have good food. And I think that's a bunch of trash. I mean, obviously, I think it's a bunch of trash. Not just my company, but several other ones that are doing really incredible things that are people that were born and raised here also. I don't know. The identity is tough because food is very different. I think our identity is that we're awesome. I don't know how else to put that.
Patrick, so you laid out for everyone the long-term game plan for Brightline. What would be the top 3 challenges that you see right now that could get in the way of achieving some of those goals?
So I'm an optimist at heart. So they don't roll off the top of my tongue. But I think that what's unique about Florida and South Florida and Miami in particular is, and I was in the hotel industry before I got into the train business. Florida is the Teflon state. It's very resilient. It's exceptionally resilient. And what we just experienced through COVID further doubled down on that resilience. And some of the stories that Michael's talking about are anecdotal, but those stories are happening all throughout the state. We're seeing it all throughout the state, where were folks who we figured out who was in it for the long term and who was not, and who was going to be able to handle it and who wasn't, and we found our character, right? We found who we were, I think, through this. So I think we're very bullish on Florida. We continue to be very bullish on Florida. We see the population growth. All of the things that we've just talked about that are attracting people to Florida, they're not temporary. This isn't a flash in the pan. This isn't a boom, that's going to be followed by a bust. This isn't a bubble. People are understanding what the value is, and they're staying here for good. And they're making this their home, and they're investing. And, we don't have people coming in and putting down like 5% anymore. I'm not, we do rental apartments, so I'm not collecting deposits right now. But anecdotally, and from some of my colleagues here on the days, people aren't putting down 10% anymore or 5% anymore. They're putting down meaningful deposits. They're getting real mortgages, and they're paying them. That's very different from what we experienced a decade ago. So all of that gives us increased confidence in the state of Florida and in South Florida. And the government is also doubling down on infrastructure, transportation, safety, mobility opportunities. There's meaningful bills that have already come out and that are going to continue to come out through this administration, and I think for subsequent administrations, because I think as a country, we've realized we're about 50 years behind Europe and Asia in terms of high-speed rail and transit and transportation, and we got to catch up. And I think that realization has dawned on the government and on the private sector, and I think we all have a responsibility to continue as a community to bring those solutions to bear, and that's what's happening. So, we have made a $5 billion bet so far on Florida, and, we're building an infrastructure asset for the next 100 years.
So you're going to get the final question. What's the profile of the rider that you're looking for? Is it a commuter? Is it a visitor? Who is it?
It's a little subjective because so are people's travel needs. It's kind of like asking what kind of restaurant should we have in downtown Miami. We have leisure travelers who will only probably use this once or twice ever because they're coming into the state of Florida on vacation. We have business travelers who travel 5 to 10 times a month. We have commuters who travel 40 times a month. So we have what's unique about Florida is it is a very diverse market, not just in terms of nationalities, but in terms of demographics. And there are all kinds of shapes, sizes, and flavors. So we are trying to cater to all of those shapes, sizes, and flavors. Like right now, we're only operating a fraction of what we're ultimately going to be operating. We never really intended to just run a 3-stop railroad from Miami to West Palm Beach. It was always about connecting South Florida to Central Florida. And in doing so, we want to cater to the widest audience possible. So we have, we've got products that range from, if you're a commuter, you could be traveling for $7 or $8 a day, all the way up to riding premium during our Basel for $60 for a one-way trip from Miami to West Palm Beach. But that, includes all your food and your booze and transportation to and from the station. So it's a diverse market. We have diverse products.
So that's going to do it for us. I wanted to thank each and every panelist for this productive and great discussion this afternoon. Give them a big hand.